Hello once again, everybody, and thank you for joining me on this Tuesday, June 30th edition of Bang the Book Radio. My name is Adam Burke, your host for the next 20 to 25 minutes or so as we go over the Rocket Mortgage Classic and this weekend at Indianapolis Motor Speedway, the Big Machine Hand Sanitizer 400 at the Brickyard, whatever the hell that thing's called. We'll talk about that with Brian Blessing, the host of Sportsbook Radio and Vegas Hockey Hotline. Previews already up over at BangTheBook.com for the Rocket Mortgage Classic, for this weekend's NASCAR Cup Series event. The Xfinity Series at Indianapolis Motor Speedway will be run on the road course. That's the Pennzoil 150. Once odds are up for that, we'll get those up. Also still covering the KBO over there. Big UFC card this weekend. Preview coming today or tomorrow for that. And, of course, talking some Major League Baseball stuff as well, with that starting up here in about, 3.5 weeks' time or so. As you know, this and every edition of Bang the Book Radio presented by our friends over at DSI Sportsbook. BTB and the number 200 is that promo code. 100% deposit match bonus for the Sportsbook. 100% deposit match bonus for the live casino at BetDSI. It's only a game until you bet it. One guest on the program here today, that is Brian Blessing, the host of Sportsbook Radio and Vegas Hockey Hotline. Brian, how's it going today, man?
All right, Adam. How you doing, pal?
Doing all right, buddy. Appreciate your time as always here, sir. And I guess we'll head on up to Detroit to start things off here today with the Rocket Mortgage Classic. And, you and I talked on Tuesday, excuse me, we talked about the Travelers Championship, that the first two events really, really good, really strong fields, a little bit of drama on Sunday in the Travelers, but this Rocket Mortgage Classic field, the first one we've had since the return that's just not jumping off the chart to me.
But I think it will be like the first 3 weeks where I think there's drama. Actually, there shouldn't have been drama this past week. I don't know what Dustin Johnson was thinking. He gets the 3-shot lead, hammers one OB when it's easy to say after the fact. He only went out of bounds by a yard. But on a par 5, you just hit the fairway. You got a 3-shot lead now. That was suspect. The one that was crazy was he hits 1,000 golf balls, 999 of them are in the water. Ball lands up literally 1.5 feet from the water and plugs on 15. And then they come back from the rain delay with a 2-shot lead and, just hit the middle of the green, shoot to the meat of the green, 2-putt, get out of there. And he goes flag hunting, short sides himself, and takes a bogey. His thought process was unbelievable. I mean, he tried to give that away, but to his credit, it's a remarkable accomplishment. Another year, every year on tour, a guy's got a win. That's a remarkable accomplishment, and it was his putting that was incredible. I mean, throughout the day. So it was an interesting tournament that really should have been interesting. But I think there were things that happened on Sunday that are going to help us find a winner today or this week.
And as we look at this Rocket Mortgage Classic field, if you're a course history bettor, you don't have much here because this is only the second year of this event. Took over for the Quicken Loans National. Last year was the first year there at Detroit Golf Club. And, when we look back at last year, it was all Nate Lashley. Not exactly a household name, but he crushed the field, won by 6 shots, dominated in strokes gained, was the second best putter in the tournament. He was the 4th best guy in tee to green. He was just really, really good in every possible way. Doc Redman was the runner-up. And, Brian, what's interesting about this is we talked about Doc Redman last week. I even saw him at some of the U.S. sports books. I think he was at DraftKings at like 300-1 last week in the Travelers. He's 25-1 this week at 5 dimes to win this Rocket Mortgage Classic. So that speaks to the field a little bit, but he has played well, was the runner-up last year. What are you kind of looking at here this week in Detroit?
Well, again, I think we're looking at it and saying some of these numbers flat out just don't make any sense. We're always trying to find soft numbers, and in the golf, we're finding ridiculous numbers. Now, they end up being proven right because only one guy wins a golf tournament. But there are some guys that are 140-1 that I would play them head-to-head in a matchup with 50 guys ahead of them. You're sitting there just looking for overlays. DeChambeau's a favorite at 6-1, and he's just played great. And he snake bit a little bit. I mean, the frustration on his face, lipping out birdie putts and The putters kind of let him down a little bit. Webb Simpson will win a few weeks back. 12-1, the price no good. Patrick Reed. Ty Hatton was 60-1 2 weeks ago, 16-1 now. Matsuyama, I don't know. Don't trust him. Hovland played well this past weekend. That price is way too low. The breaks hurt Sung Jae Im more than anybody. Then Rickie Fowler's at 33-1. It's a name. I mean, Rickie Fowler, in terms of the track record to win, the price is ridiculous. I will tell you, from what I watched this past weekend, I think, and he's been bet down from 40 to 33. We did a podcast yesterday. Kevin Na, tee to green, was really, really good. And the thing is, when you watch and you learn and you listen, like the 2 weeks ago, when on Saturday they're telling us about, I didn't know this, that Berger had the consecutive rounds under par streak. Well, Sunday morning, bet him at 14-1. Thank you for the information, and lucked out and got the win. Well, Kevin Na, before the tournament, the first tournament back, he was picking one of his kids up and he wrenched his knee. So he missed the cut. He was hurt. So he rested a little bit. And, we think of these guys, they walk a lot. There's a lot of hills. If your knee's not right, it's not good. Anyway, he comes back this week. He rolls in he was over that putt on 18 like it was to win the tournament because it had to be for a couple $100,000. And he makes the 18-footer. Kevin Na coming in here 40-1. I think is a real good price. And another guy that played really well. He shot 66 3 days in a row, shot 67 on Sunday, which wasn't good enough to get it done. But Patton Kizzire is 175-1. That's insanity. And like you said, this is a diminished field where, the name guys, anybody can win this thing. The one ridiculous overlay to me is 80-1. Is Brendon Todd, who won twice earlier in the year, back-to-back weeks. So he's got this window in past history of really good short-term form cycles. And he's tied with Dustin Johnson. The guy had one bad hole. He took a triple bogey. He got a horrible break. He's on a side hill lie, and he sculls one over the back of the green. He should have just punched it back into the green, took his bogey, get out of dodge. He got greedy, took a triple. He had his heart ripped right out of his chest. He had one bad hole. He hit virtually every fairway for 4 days, and he's won twice earlier this year, and he's 80-1. He's 80-1, and Rickie Fowler's 33-1. Well, how does that make any sense?
Yeah, like you said, it's about name value, and it's about some of these guys kind of getting their prices pushed down a little bit. I will say this, of the short prices, I do like Hovland this week. I would not play, 13, 14-1 like he's out there now. I think I saw him at one of the U.S. books at like 25-1, which, of course, being in Ohio, I don't have access to. 25-1 is a pretty good price on Hovland if you can find one. Probably at this point in time, I imagine that you really can't. JT Poston's a guy that I'm kind of looking at here this week because last year, granted, it was the first year of this event, but it was a putting tournament. I mean, Lashley won at 25 under. Redmond was second at 19. Bunch of guys 15 under or better. JT Poston's a really, really good putter. He's been playing pretty well. He's kind of my guy there in that 35 to 40-1 range that you and I like to look at. A couple other names I want to throw out here. Lucas Glover at 60-1. He's not a bad look this week. He's been playing pretty well overall. Looked pretty good in this event last year. Didn't really, have a great finish. Didn't putt super well. Other than that, he played relatively well. Kevin Kisner's a guy in that 45 range. Very good putter. They say that the rough is going to play a little bit tougher this year than it did last year. So I kind of looked at guys that sort of hit it down the middle and then putt it really well. Like a JT Poston, like a Kevin Kisner, that type of guy. A couple of longer shots I was sort of taking a look at here. And, this is a guy that we talk about a lot, a guy that not a whole lot of people think about because he mostly plays over on the European Tour, Peter Uline. Peter Uline played really, really well in the Charles Schwab, hasn't played the last 2 weeks, but he's very, very good in par 4 scoring. All the par 5s on this course are birdie or better holes. The par 4s are what will dictate the winner. So I think a guy like Peter Uline at that 135, 140-1 type of price, he's not a bad look. And I'll throw out one more for you here. Home course type of guy, Brian Stewart is 115-1. He's from the Detroit area, played his college golf at Oakland University, top 5 in this event last year. He led the field in strokes gained putting last year. I don't know, his current form isn't particularly awesome.
No,
but
he played good this weekend.
Know this course.
He played good this past. He was in the 60s every round last week. And Brian Stewart's a guy, we talked about him probably on this podcast last year. Nobody ever heard of this guy. And when they went to Detroit for the first time, we're sitting there going, he's the only guy we were looking. We're trying to this guy. Well, who's got the home course edge here? And we mentioned Brian Stewart last year at like 200-1, and he finished top 5. Now, and the thing was that he'd be followed by friends and family, and he'd have the support, and he knows the course. Well, there's no fans. But, yes, Stewart's a guy we talked about on the podcast at that price that, in his own backyard. There's two guys, specific to one. And by the way, your description of what it's going to take to win this thing makes me feel even better about two guys specifically, and that's and Brendon Todd. Because Brendon Todd hit, I think, every fairway but 2, and one he missed in the shortcut or rough. I mean, Todd just drove the ball. Unbelievable. The pressure of winning a tournament, it's one of my favorite events every year is the Q School. Watching those guys, the pressure of, will I make the PGA Tour? And you watch some of these guys unravel. Well, I got to tell you something. On Sunday, and he cost me money. He beat Schauffele in a matchup, cost me a nice big parlay on the matchups on Sunday. This Will Gordon was playing on Sunday, knowing if he finished third, that he would get his tour exempt status. Because other than that, he was going on being an alternate with guys cutting out and maybe a handful of exemptions he'd get in. Well, sure enough, this guy fires a great round on Sunday with the pressure of being able to play this week. And he finished third. And now he can sit there and the air's out of the balloon, but he answered the bell in that pressure. And now he's coming in here with the weight of the world off his shoulders, knowing he's going to get to play every week. Will Gordon at 90-1, it might be worth a peek.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a good one. I like that one too. And again, I mean, we're talking about kind of some longer shots to win, maybe hitting on a few of the lower prices, like a Kevin Na, like a Victor Hovland, stuff like that. Matchups are out there, props are out there. Most of the U.S. books outside of Nevada do top 5, top 10, top 20, stuff like that. So even some of these long shot guys, like a Michael Thompson at 125-1, like some of the other guys we mentioned, Uline, some of the longer prices, you don't necessarily have to take them to win. You can take them for top 5s, top 20s at, plus 300, plus 350, stuff like that. A lot of different ways to go about betting golf. And, like we talked about last week, Brian, I mean, I think that's been a really big draw here for a lot of novice bettors that are approaching golf is that you've got matchups. You've got the group matchups. You've got 3 balls. You've got, all these different ways of betting these golf tournaments that is 125-1 shot going to win it? No, probably not. If one does, it makes your whole year. But there are alternative ways of betting these guys too.
No, again, I think the strategy is play higher numbered guys on the way in and focus on matchups, and then come back with the adjusted future odds heading to the weekend before moving day. And, you'll get a high-end golfer. My best guess is before Saturday when Dustin Johnson shot the big round, my best guess is you probably could have got a price on Dustin Johnson on Friday night that was higher than what his odds were before the tournament.
And again, too, I mean, as we talked about, with this being a putting tournament last year and a lot of guys kind of posting some low numbers, we've seen that. A lot of guys have been posting 63, 64, DJ with a 61. Guys can go out there and post a low number on Saturday at 20-1, something like that, put themselves in contention for Sunday, roll right on into it. So even if prices on guys like this, I mean, you could get a better price on DeChambeau Friday night than the 6-1 he's at right now. Same thing with Simpson, maybe Hovland. Good idea to start looking at those. I know you've talked about that a lot, but for our listeners that may be new to golf or maybe haven't been betting golf as much, those opportunities are there on Friday night for sure.
Well, Dustin Johnson's interview after he won the thing was pretty interesting. He said, there's no fans. He goes, It's odd. He said, but the crazy thing is, he says Thursday and Friday not so much. You're out there, some of these guys are coming out slapping around, but now you get to the weekend, and he said it's not any different. He said, you're feeling the pressure, and that pressure absolutely exists. He said, and it ratchets up on Saturday. So, some of these guys that are rabbits out of the gate on a Thursday or Friday, he had a good rally, but the Mackenzie Hughes kid come out of the gate, right, 10 under par. What did he shoot, a 60, was it? Or a 61?
Yeah.
On Thursday. He hung around because of that great round, and he made a couple of bombs on Sunday and cashed a nice check. But the bottom line is, the guys that are going to get the job done on the weekend, they start kicking it into gear on Saturday, Thursday, Friday. You're trying not to shoot yourself out of it. And then the crazy thing is, like for this tournament, the bombs are in play because there are only a handful of names that are up there that might have a quote-unquote intimidation factor.
Well, and of course, what used to be the Memorial is apparently now the Workday Charity Open next week at Muirfield Golf Club. So
they're actually playing there. I was looking at this. We're like, what's this? They're playing there back-to-back weeks.
Oh, are they?
The Memorial there is there.
Yeah, it is. Okay.
The Memorial is there the week after. So there's a real odd dynamic where they're playing back-to-back. Now, I don't know what the field will be for the first one. And I haven't – is Tiger showing up at Memorial?
I would imagine so. But that makes sense because the purse for this first one is $6.2 million. The purse for the Memorial is $9.3. So, yeah, that makes sense.
But obviously you'd look at a guy or two that plays well in this thing, next week and apply him to the following week. But probably the way you would do it would be a guy that struggles to make the cut and then has a good weekend and figured something out to get you a price.
Yeah, and of course, too, look for some of these guys that are maybe in this 70 to 80 to 1 range this week that play well. They're probably going to be, 20 to 30 or, maybe 40 to 1 next week in that shorter field. But, maybe there's good opportunities with matchups and stuff like that on those guys for the back-to-back there in Dublin. I didn't know that. I wouldn't
be surprised, though, that there'll be some, there'll be a good field for that, even though, 6.3 is nothing to sneeze at. Winners, I don't know. The winner probably still gets, maybe still gets $1 million. I don't know. 8, if it's knocked down, it's knocked down. So be it. But a lot of guys are going to use that and say, "Hey, listen, if I cash a number, great. But I'm getting some really quality work in for the Memorial." So I think the field will be good for that tournament.
Well, we'll definitely we'll revisit that one next week, and of course have the back-to-back weeks at Muirfield to talk about, but. Let's go out to Indianapolis Motor Speedway here, and it's very weird to be talking about NASCAR on July 4th weekend at IMS. Usually they're down at Daytona for the Coke Zero 400, but now they're at Indianapolis here, and this was scheduled, much like last week's doubleheader at Pocono. The Big Machine Hand Sanitizer 400 was the Big Machine Vodka 400 last year. Kevin Harvick, your 4-1 favorite. Kyle Busch, Denny Hamlin, both in the 5 to 6-1 range. Truex and Keselowski, 8 or 9-1, about around there. Those are the only single-digit prices out at 5 dimes. As always, shop around for the best prices. Logano, Blaney, Elliott, the next group of guys. And then a big drop on down to Eric Jones. But, Brian, we got a big track here. 2.5 miles, 160 laps for this one.
Yeah, it's Indy, and the defending champ is Harvick, and his car's been, consistently one of the best cars all year long. Kyle Busch has won there a couple of times. Keselowski 2 years back. Keselowski always seems to put himself in position. You take a look at him. I'm kind of all about Chase Elliott this week. It's still a lot of work to be done for this, but I'd be looking at Chase Elliott. By the way, Jimmy Johnson's won this a bunch of times. His car's been good, but he's snake bit. The one thing we talked last week, it was almost a stroke on the board. Denny Hamlin and the Joe Gibbs cars kind of own Pocono, and he had the best car both days. Basically, on the first race Saturday, Harvick won it, but he won it with pit strategy, and Hamlin's driving like a beast. It's hard to exclude him from anything. Kyle Busch is just having real bad luck all over the place. But I think a guy like Chase Elliott kind of sneaks in here. I don't know if it's under the radar. And that's the one rub. The difference here is, you look at the prices that are available to you. A guy like Elliott, he's only 6-1, but he's like the fifth choice.
Yeah, this is an interesting one because, you do have a lot of history here. I mean, a lot of these guys have 18, 19 races here, especially some of the big ones. Harvick, 13 top 10s out of his 19 races. Kyle Busch, 11 top 10s out of 15. Both of those guys with 2 wins. Jimmy Johnson's a 4-time winner here, but I think the last one was 2012 or 2015, something like that. Only 1 top 5 finish here since then. This is an interesting race because, this is one where a lot of it's about the car because it's a big track, flatter corners. So there's really not a whole lot of speed you could take up into the corners, high bank, come back around. A lot of this has to do with the car. And when you talk about the best cars, it is Harvick. It is Hamlin. It is, Keselowski. It is Elliott. And Elliott's price actually moving down a little bit here this morning. So some people definitely taking a look at him. I don't think that this is a great race. And you and I've tried to pick off some of these, looking at like an Eric Almirola, looking at a William Byron, something like that. I don't think this is a great race to sort of go with some of those longer shots. I think you kind of find one of those short prices that you like and just kind of roll with that.
Yeah, I mean, there'd only be a couple of guys I'd consider at a crazy price. I think William Byron's starting to get it together a little bit. Almirola had a great car on Saturday. Almirola maybe's worth a peek.
He's got 4 straight top 10 or top 5s, doesn't he?
He's been driving really well. Yeah, he's been good. Actually, he may, it was the pit strategy that Harvick won the race on Saturday cost Almirola, who had led the most laps. So Almirola's kind of interesting. There's something about the Tyler Reddick kid. I think he's going to win one. He's a rookie, but they really like this kid. I mean, he's kind of balls to the wall, right? I mean, he's all out all the time, and he gets, he gets involved in some wrecks and things like that. But he's got a fast car. Yeah, the other guy who is, I just think sneaky, really good. But it obviously the power brokers that are above him, but. Don't sleep on what DiBenedetto does on a weekly basis for the Wood Brothers car. I mean, he gets the most out of that car. So it's Indy. I don't know necessarily the big ones in play like it is at Talladega, but crazier things have happened. But like I said, I'd kind of run with a guy like Elliott here. It's hard to leave Hamlin off any play, but I mean when you get into matchups, I do. I look to the kind of the middle tier guys with the real opportunities. Some of the best betting opportunities are actually the guys that are running 15th to 20th.
Yeah, especially like you said, with the matchup angles and some of the different things you could take a look at here. Like, we mentioned William Byron. He's a small favorite, plus 225 over Bowman, DiBenedetto, and Johnson in his group. Reddick is plus 250 in his group with Bell, Dillon, and Kenseth. Another guy who runs really well here, and he's an Indiana guy, Ryan Newman. He's plus 230 in his matchup with Stenhouse, Buescher, and Cole Custer. Newman, I mean, the results haven't necessarily been there, and obviously had that very, very scary crash at the Daytona 500 to open the year where he was, running up in the front of the pack. He feels like kind of a big track guy. So maybe Ryan Newman in some matchups or in some group play could be worth a look.
Yeah, and the thing about a track like this, other than the front straightaways and into turn one, it's hard to pass here. And Newman's a real hard guy to get by.
Yeah, it could definitely be a good angle there with Ryan Newman. Last thing I want to ask you about here, Brian, as we finish up, I believe I saw that, the NHL's down to the final 4 cities here, Edmonton, Toronto, Chicago, and Vegas?
Yeah, I think we did a Zoom interview deal, one of those conference calls with Braden McNabb from the Golden Knights last night, and he said I got the impression the players are voting on not only the CBA but on the return to play, and it could be happening today. And that's the league can't announce the hub cities until they get the players to say, yeah, we're going to do this. So, part of it, you said, are they watching to wait and see what's going on with Vegas, which has had a kind of a spike. But I just don't think it's as outlandish here as it's being projected around the country. I think it's a combination of it's a perfect storm. I think there was a reopening that I think people were doing due diligence on. But wrapped around the reopening, right before that, was a week worth of the public unrest and the protests. And we're, 2 weeks away from that. And I think that's a large part of what these spikes are, because they're saying demographically a lot more people that are getting this are younger. So I think to me, it may be even more the protests than the reopening that has led to these spikes. And we'll see it at the end of this week if all of a sudden, hopefully, there's this massive drop-off back to a better sense of normalcy here where things were trending that way. But I think the league was waiting maybe a little bit to see what the deal was in Vegas. They're talking Vegas and Toronto were starting to sound like the favorites. Edmonton's got the facilities. There's nothing going on there from the COVID perspective. But the players got to vote on this, and they've got a say in it. So we're waiting to hear. But they'd say Chicago's still in the hopper. I'd be hard-pressed to think that would happen. Chicago would only be stopgap if for some reason they said, we're worried about Vegas. I don't know. I can't get a read on the Edmonton or Toronto thing. It seemed like it was, Toronto gained a lot of steam. The other thing that's come out that I think will happen that they had talked about, if Vegas and Toronto, per se, were the teams, that the Western Conference teams would go east and the East teams would come west. I don't think that's happened. I think they'll live with the fact that if Vegas and Toronto, made the finals, they'll take the PR hit. Well, they got to play at home. Well, there's no fans, and they had to stay at a hotel. But it's TV would rule all here. You don't want the Western teams in the Eastern time zone and the fans in the West they're having to watch one of their teams play at 4 p.m. when people are still working. And you don't want these guys playing hockey games at 10:30 at night. So I think the Eastern Conference teams are going to stay in the Eastern venue, and the Western Conference team will stay in the Western venue. So I think that's going to happen.
Yeah, I think so, too. I did see that, I believe Toronto's mayor mandated masks today or yesterday, something like that. So I don't know if that's maybe a little bit of a precursor to suggest that, with the Blue Jays coming back, with the NHL probably being there, maybe that's kind of a precursor to that, sort of a preemptive measure. In
a weird way, like Vegas extended the Phase 3 for another month. And you said, that's not good news. Well, actually, the NHL could look at that and say, no, that's good news. If there's going to be less people out and about, and these guys are going to be, in a bubble. So technically, it shouldn't matter. But if they're imposing masks in Toronto and they're extending Phase 3 in Vegas, and that means less people on the streets or in proximity to these guys, instead of you view it like, that's not good news. But for the NHL, they'll go, that's great for us.
I don't want to keep you too long, but real quick, what'd you think of the draft lottery?
I mean, it is what it is. I mean, I'm a Sabres fan. I know all about, losing lotteries. I got a bunch of friends that are Red Wings fans. They got ripped apart. I mean, to go from 1 to 4. And believe me, Ottawa's sitting there the favorite with the 2nd and 3rd pick, and they end up with 3rd and 5th. And, God knows, a Pittsburgh or a Chicago or somebody like that, walks in and gets this kid, and he ends up playing next to Sidney Crosby. And then they've got an heir apparent for, Crosby. It is what it is. I don't know. I mean, in a perfect world, I mean, in this one instance, you could say it should have been only the 7 teams that didn't make it. But at the same time, you had a bunch of teams that weren't going to make the playoffs that now they're doing hey, you get a shot to play, in this tournament, and you're nowhere near good enough, but you were out of the lottery. I think they did the best with what they could do, but it was almost predictable that the league would get another day of hype out of this, that the clear number 1 pick, there'll be another night of drama for the league to get the news out that who won the first pick. It was an odd dynamic, but it's a weird time. So I think they did the best they could do with it. I don't think Red Wings or Senators fans are buying that.
No, I don't think so either. Brian Blessing, the host of Sportsbook Radio and Vegas Hockey Hotline. Brian, how can people check out those 2 shows of yours?
Yep, KSHP.com live noon to 2 Pacific time, and the shows are available at sportsbookradio.com via archive, and I tweet the links out at Brian Blessing. And, we get great guests, the sportsbook directors in town on Sportsbook Radio. Great guests from the hockey world. Today, Daniel Negreanu, in fact, is going to be coming on Vegas Hockey Hotline. And I believe they might have an update on the World Series of Poker. I saw him tweeting out some news and notes on that. So we'll have a little hockey and poker talk today.
There we go. Always great to chat with you, Brian. Once again, make sure you follow him on Twitter at Brian Blessing to get the links for Sportsbook Radio and also Vegas Hockey Hotline. Brian, appreciate the time as always, man. Thank you so much, and we'll talk to you again next week.
All right, Adam, buddy. Have a good day.
There you go. There's Brian Blessing, once again, the host of Sportsbook Radio and Vegas Hockey Hotline, sportsbookradio.com, kshp.com, and at Brian Blessing on Twitter. Coming up on Thursday, the return of the Bettor's Box. We'll be back on the air talking Major League Baseball. 5 and Fly segment for the AL East. 5 minutes on all 5 teams. Then preview the KBO for this weekend. That'll do it for me. Thank you so much for listening, everybody, and I will talk to you again on Thursday.